I'm Judy LaPorte. I'm the interviewer. Will you each state your name and how it's spelled?
My name is John G. Croteau, nickname Mike.
And we'll get into that.
My name is Rosemary K. Croteau.
And I used to hear you called Tookie. Where did you ever develop that nickname?
My family always called me Tookie. I don't know where it came from.
Oh, for heaven's sake. And how did you develop from John, Mike, or Mickey?
It came from my grandfather.
Really?
He tagged it on me quite early in life, and it stuck.
Oh, that's very cute. A lot of people have asked me, how did he ever be Mike?
His mother said that when he was young, Mickey the boy artist was popular or something, and then his grandfather tagged him with his Mickey.
Well, it fits. When and where were you born?
I was born in New London Hospital.
And when?
1929, December 10th.
And where were you born?
I was born in Chester, Vermont,
And when?
April 4th, 1933.
And when did you come to the Newbury? You were here from the beginning. And when did you come to the Newbury area?
My folks have a cottage on Bowles Road.
Oh.
It was part of the Bowles estate, and my mother knew Mr. Bowles. And she told him that she was looking for a cottage. And he called her up and told her that there would be a cottage on Bowles Road where it was, and to the post office and pick up the key. Gave it to her.
That sounds like
Her family
Mr. Bowles.
had sponsored him, I believe, to go to Vermont Academy in Saxons River, Vermont. And this is the way he felt he could repay them.
Oh, that's so nice. But he was an interesting man.
Oh, yes.
Tell us something about your family.
I'm one of 5 children. My father was from North Walpole, New Hampshire, and my mother was from Saxons River, Vermont.
And are you the oldest, youngest?
I am the youngest of the 5. All of my siblings have passed away.
And how about, tell us something about your family.
Well, I was born and raised in Newbury, went to grade school partially for 2 or 3 years up to Baker Hill, and that ended. The teacher committed suicide. Why? Who knows why? And at that time, my age was getting up to close to 38, which was the year of the hurricane. And when that happened, right after that, we moved to down here in Newbury, Cinder.
And you have just one sister?
I had one sister, and that is all. Yeah. She's now deceased.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite memories of this area?
Of this area?
Yeah.
Well, skiing, for one thing, believe it or not. When I started skiing, I was just in high school, and we skied on this side of the mountain, number 1, on the old
Dick Durant's trail.
The old trail. So, pretty much had it to myself. The ski club out of Newport operated it, but I don't know whether they used it primarily on weekends or what, but it was completely packed down, and so I could go on any time I wanted. There's nobody there to pick on
But you had
me.
to climb up the hill on your
I
own
had
power.
to use the feet. That was all walkable.
And how about you? What are some of your good memories of this area?
The lake, mainly. The cottage, the things we did. We always had a crowd. The family always arrived, and we just enjoyed it.
Do you ski?
I skied a little, but not. He took me on this side of the mountain one day, I put my skis together and sat on them and went down. It was impossible. The little bridges had broken, rotted, and no.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school in Windsor, Vermont.
And where did you go to school?
I went to, they were all in Newbury. Primarily the one in Baker Hill I started.
And then what about high school?
In high school I went down to Warner. But the other one was center school, I think a year or two there, and then moved down to South Newbury. Last 4 grades.
Where did you or your family shop? Where did you?
In Windsor, Mary?
Oh,
Mainly they went to Claremont. Claremont was a big shopping center at that time.
and where did your family shop?
Nothing big. Newport probably about as close and busy as anything.
What was the mountain and the lake like back then?
Much quieter, number one. There was nowhere near the amount of people that we now enjoy that kind of keep the lake up to snuff. But it was kind of bare when I was growing up.
And when you came here, even as a child, to the cottage,
Well, yes, we had the cottage from the 30s. Well, I was a baby, I think, when we got it.
and so this wasn't even the ski area,
No.
but the lake. What were the roads like?
They weren't bad. They were pretty good.
Not too bad, no.
About the same.
Surprisingly, they were not too bad.
What was the community like?
Well, I think it was a lot closer than it is today. Of course, it was smaller, so everybody knew everybody. Nowadays, there's so many new people, they have no idea who they are.
Were the neighborhood activities?
Only connected to the school. There was not much else other than plays, which were put on every year
Oh, yeah.
at the town hall in South Newbury.
And how did you meet people? Through the plays?
Through the plays, and of course the Grange Hall was right next door, so
And how did you meet people once you moved here?
We only knew our close cottages up there in the lake because we were only, my mother rented the cottage out, so we were only here for the 2 weeks that my father had vacation. So I didn't get to meet too many people around.
And then you moved to Newbury full-time when you married?
No,
Yeah. No.
no. When we got married, we were first in Manchester for, 4 years?
almost 4 years.
And then we bought the house on Birch Bluff and moved here.
Can I throw in a little question?
Absolutely.
How did you meet each other?
We met at a dawn dance in the harbor at Larry's Playhouse. He was in the Navy. He was home on leave.
Did you ever go there?
I think so, yes. Are there special people you remember who contributed to the life in the town, besides your father and mother?
I don't know anyone in particular. I knew most everybody, so it was a big family.
Yeah.
But none particularly.
Particularly.
Can you say a little bit about your mother and father?
Yes, they're both hard workers. My father ran a garage. In the early years, he worked pretty much for his father, who ran a cycle of going around the lake, all the hotels, and picking up the garbage. Pigs. He had a lot of pigs, and this is how they were fed.
That's great.
It was interesting.
And your mother was a fisherman.
Yeah, she liked fishing quite well. So,
She was. What did you do for fun?
At what stage in life?
How about as kids first? Yeah, as kids, what did you do?
Well, I'm not pretty much of a hunter. I always have been. So this is my number one love. And unfortunately, my children weren't hunters. They stayed home and I took care of them, but not in the woods. That didn't interest them at all. So
And then later on, what did you do for fun? When you were young married couple.
We went to dances.
Went to a lot of
We always went to dance.
band dances.
Yeah.
So,
And I was
And
going to
our-
ask you what you did for fun, but the dancing was
Dancing.
number one.
Where were the places you went dancing?
Bradford on
Fortune's Barn?
Orchard Bar.
Massasecum.
What?
You know that?
Massasecum was the dance hall.
yes,
Yep.
yes.
And there was another one in Warner, down on, what's the name of that lake?
Oh, Pleasant Lake,
Pleasant Lake?
Pleasant Lake.
Yeah,
Yes.
There was a
Oh,
place there.
oh, yeah. That was a dance hall part of the time and a roller skating rink part of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the playhouse at Sunapee was the same way.
Yeah.
And Rich Grove.
Yes. We didn't mention Birch Grove. Now that was a good roller skating rink.
Where
You
was
used to
where was
work
that?
there, didn't you?
Where was that?
Yeah.
If you look at the history where the train stopped, okay, that's Birch Grove area.
You mean right
And the-
here in the harbor?
No.
Yeah, just
Okay.
a little ways up.
Okay.
Birch Grove Road is now a road, so
Yeah.
that
Okay.
Yes.
I
Makes a
didn't know.
little loop in there, not very large.
Okay.
That's Davis
Davis
Cabins,
Cabins.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was
Oh, so
Birch
right there,
Grove
yeah.
Road. Yeah, oh, yes.
Yeah.
They had quite the roller skating rink there.
And that was a big place. They had barn dances,
Yeah.
big dances, big people coming in and playing. So it was nice while it operated, but it dissolved, I think, in what, 1952
I don't know.
or something like
So
that.
did it go
Yeah.
out with the train? I mean, was it sort of related to the train?
Well, it was a time where they were slowing down, I think, on these.
And the owner, I think, kind of wanted
He
to
didn't-
retire.
He had other
and-
things to do. Larry Bonner.
Yeah.
He was an interesting fellow. Very interesting.
And we've already talked about the houses you lived in, but I mean, we know, of course, that your house here now is on the historical.
I said, recall.
Yes, so that's
Yeah.
great.
Mike, is that the house you grew up in?
No,
No, you were up
no.
on Baker Hill.
He grew up in the house over by Tackle Shack. That was where they lived.
Yeah.
Okay.
When
And the
the,
Tackle
Yeah,
Shack
we
was his
lived there.
father's garage.
Oh, I was going to ask where your father's garage was. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I think we probably moved down here somewhere like 1941,
Okay.
42, somewhere in there.
Okay.
They had
did you
two
remodel the house on the bluff when you moved in?
What?
Did you remodel the house where you live
schools.
now?
We've done some things. It wasn't vintage. It was a cottage. It was a summer cottage.
Oh,
So we insulated it. We put in furnaces. We replaced windows. We've done
Minor thing,
quite a
but
bit.
lots of times.
insulating it isn't minor.
Well,
Well,
Not today.
I'm glad we did it when we did, because today it would be the price of the house.
Yeah, yeah. And we answered your question about your parents working nearby, because,
Yes.
and you worked too with
Yep.
them.
plus they drove school buses.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you ever drive a school bus?
Nope.
You weren't old enough.
No, by the time I got out of high school, I went to
In the Navy.
Manchester for a year and then to the Navy the following year. So for almost 4 years. So.
Can you
His
talk a little
father
bit?
drove one school bus and his mother drove the other one.
Well, that's good. You got it all covered.
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about Manchester, what brought you down there, and then about the Navy?
Prior to joining the Navy, after I got out of high school, I went down and lived with my mother's sister and her husband. And I lived there about a year and a half. things weren't great down there. I had a job in a leather factory and it wasn't very interesting. So one of my friends was thinking of joining the service. So in the middle of the winter, we hopped on a bus and headed to Boston. And he got indoctrinated into the Marine Corps. They wouldn't take me because I was missing a couple of teeth in back.
Can you imagine?
At that time, they were real strict.
Oh,
And
my.
so I went across the street where the Navy was and took their exam, and no problem. And within 3 months, I was in the Navy.
And what year was that when you joined
This
the
was
Navy?
49,
Okay.
1949.
And talk a little bit about the Navy. What did you do and what did you see?
I was in the war period, Vietnam, and the ship that I was on was a repair ship. It was a big, clunky ship, but at that time, with the war overseas in progress, we had quite a few people that wanted to have war games, and we spent quite a few months in Puerto Rico, all in the islands, having war games, and this went on for several years.
Wow.
I think when I got out, it was in '54, and I think the war ended in '55, something like that. Right?
And
In other words, he
Rosemary,
never got out of the islands.
that's
Spent a
Pretty
lot
rough
of time.
station.
yeah.
Very enjoyable.
Yeah.
St. Thomas, St. Kitts.
That doesn't sound too
Yeah.
terrible. Rosemary, what were you doing during that time? You met Mike at some point during that, right?
1950, when I was in the service, so I was probably 51.
I think 51. I met him at
50,
the John Dance. And when I got out of high school, I worked in a bookstore in Windsor. And then from there, I went to an appliance store, S.R. Young, and they sold appliances and televisions and things. And I was there until I got married.
And when did you get married?
In 1956.
56.
We've been married 68 years.
You were married a year less than we were. I mean, no, a year after. Then what about your job? How did you get into your job once you got back here?
Well, just prior to getting married, I figured I need a little education. Of course, I had the GI Bill, so I had
Yeah.
a year in Boston doing primarily drafting, and this was a good thing as far as what I was going to pick up later on when I completed my schooling. And I got out in 57, completed my schooling and applied for the state and was hired almost on the spot. Of course, in those days, the state didn't pay peanuts even,
Yeah. Yeah.
very small amount, but it was very good education, really. Drafting and design and learning about highways.
And how many years did you work? them?
I done till I was 61, 62.
33 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
31, 32 years. So.
He designs highways.
Yeah.
What are some roads that you worked on? And planned for?
I did a few interstates, but primarily I was working on everything, main highways, but either putting on shoulders or resurfacing and widening them
Okay.
for the most part. And the good part about it, I went from Mass Line to the Canadian border, so education-wise, I really got to see the state, and this was quite enjoyable. We sent a survey crew out first, where we were going to either put in a new piece of highway or expanded. And when their data came in, we looked it over and put it on paper, and things that we were curious about, we'd take a trip up and see what actually was there. So very educational, I thought, and enjoyable. So you really got to see the state.
Yeah.
Well, we've already talked about how the war affected you. But how did the moon landing? Did that have any effect on you at all? Just the moon landing, when we landed on the moon.
1962 or somewhere in there.
Just sort of. And what about anything special about any of the presidents?
Not really. I knew of them, but that
Yeah.
the good and the bad.
Then what about COVID? 9/11's here, but COVID. Probably you had retired by COVID.
We were,
Oh, yeah.
we were retired, and of course we were in Florida at the time,
Oh, yeah.
and we packed up and
Came home.
Came home,
Yeah.
and that was a beginning of 4 years of not
Yeah.
going back to Florida or doing anything outside of the.
Now, do you still go to Florida?
We went down for 3 weeks last year.
Oh, yeah.
Bridget's in-law is down there, so we went down to visit. We
Are you going this year for?
I don't think so.
No. Maybe when it gets 3 feet of snow.
Yeah.
We might change our mind. I don't mind.
I really liked it down there.
Yeah.
For
And-
3 months, it really gets rid of the winter.
Nice and warm.
Are there other events that stand out to you, either in your life or in here in Newbury?
No, we're just glad that we stayed in a small town and enjoyed the people around us.
We're so much better off where we are than we would have been if we'd stayed in Manchester or someplace like that. When we see what's going on down there,
This
I
is
think you
that
briefly
was a
mentioned
lovely town when we were there.
you mentioned growing up the hurricane.
Yep.
Do you remember that as a
I sure do. It.
Yeah.
At
Do you
the
wanna talk
time,
about that?
We were living in Blodgett's. We had a small house right beside his brother's place. His uncle's place lived next door. And at that time, my father was working, I think down here in Newbury. Can't remember exactly what he was doing, but it was an experience that, what the heck is going on, you know? The trees were flying all around you. And, he came home, I think, around 6 o'clock, and we packed up and went down to my grandfather's place on Route 103A and stayed there the night and figured Blodgett's can stay up to Blodgett's.
so there really was a lot of damage in Blodgett's.
Blodgett's Landing was really, really bad. That road was completely blocked with fallen trees. It wasn't so bad, Route 103A, but the wind was really howling. So,
And my parents said that we had gotten so much rain that the roots were loose
oh yes,
in the
it came
ground.
down.
Now, did Bowles Road, did your cottage suffer from that?
I don't think we had to.
Yeah,
But what year was that?
that was
38.
38.
Oh, no, we must have had the cottage, but I was
You was
so small. I
well,
don't
yeah.
remember anything.
to really
I was in Chester during the hurricane, and I remember I went across the street to play with my little friend, and my father had to come in the car to get me to go across the street because the water was so bad rushing and everything. And my sister's husband was she was on the fire department. He was taking people out of upstairs bedroom windows in the houses all the time.
Glad we don't have that too often, though.
Yeah.
Something we can do very nicely without.
We live on the hill now.
You might not get out, but at least you can stay there.
I don't think a house was going to float
No,
away.
no.
So,
And of course, you were involved with the fire up here a lot, too.
yes, that
Yeah.
was a growing experience.
Yeah. You helped fight it, right?
Yeah.
Did you use the old Indian packs?
We use them
Describe
extensively.
those. Yeah.
This was prior to the days of hooking on hose to section. Number one, water was not that plentiful, so the only time we used the hose situation was to fill the backhoe tanks.
So how did you can you talk about that fire a little? It was 1947?
This was in 48.
48.
48.
And so what happened from the time you heard about the fire?
Well, my father was fire chief at the time, so I heard it quite soon. He stayed with the equipment up between the mountains road, but every day I would walk up and stay with a group, and we'd be fighting fire all day. And come dark, I'd come down and go home and have a little bit of food and sleep, and then the next morning would be the same thing. We'd keep moving to the south.
How many days?
I was thinking was 7 days, but I was going to have to talk to John because I'm not sure.
Describe the packs that you wore on your back.
Yeah. You never
Oh.
carried one, right?
Oh, yes, I
You
have.
did carry one.
Barely.
They're about 60 pounds, I believe. And at that time in my life, that was nothing. That was duck soup, Charles said.
How did you fill them up?
Well, primarily they'd find a small stream close by, put enough hose together to bring some water up,
Okay.
and we'd fill them.
So you didn't have to keep walking up and down to fill the pack?
Now, wherever we established a place that we could get to,
Okay.
fairly easy. But it was, I don't want to say it was fun, but it was an experience,
An adventure.
an adventure.
How old were you when you joined the fire department? 10?
I was 16 when I joined, so this was only 2 years after that,
Yeah.
that the fire was on the mountain. So, but the good thing is, I don't think it was that long in period because the area that was burnt, I'm going to say, I don't think it was 2 miles in length. It was a slow-moving fire. Everything was right there, and it wasn't a stiff wind behind pushing it.
Yeah.
It was just going up pretty much straight.
So for all those men that were up there for maybe a week going every day, so
Yep.
they just couldn't work all that time?
No, most of them would shut down at night.
Yeah.
Few people would stay around just to make sure that the equipment would be moved if possible. So.
Wow.
But there was not much doing on nights.
But during the day too, anyone that was a local business person who was fighting the fire wasn't
No.
tending
No.
to
Oh, yeah.
business.
His father's garage business wasn't doing
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
No, it was- I can't remember how many towns wasn't involved, but they were all sending in a group every day.
And was it totally devastating everywhere where the fire went? I mean, was there nothing left but black charred
Yeah,
trees?
but there was nothing there to begin with. I mean, just trees.
Yeah, yeah.
Fortunately, there's no buildings. It came close to a couple, but this is why my father kept the fire pump up there.
Yeah.
I think probably there was, 4 houses on that side of the road, so none of them got burned. So
That's a success. Yeah. Were there other big fires, or was that? I mean, that was.
that was my first big one, and I don't know of any prior to that. What is it? Meredith fire was what? 1951 maybe?
Yeah.
52. I worked on that one for one day, just one day.
Yeah.
But those were the only 2 local
Big ones.
big fires.
Okay.
So.
Are there any local legends that you can think of? No.
Other than my hunting, which was
And what makes living in Newbury special today?
well, when you get out to see these other villages and towns, you're glad you live where you do. So,
And we know you're glad you don't live still in Manchester.
That's right.
Is there anything else that
I have some others. We talked about Mike's jobs and stuff. Rosemary, how about you? Once you got married and moved here, were you home with your kids? Were you working?
No, I'm working. I worked at Concord Hospital until
3 years maybe? 3 or 4 years?
maybe. And then I went to Swenson Granite. I worked there until I was pregnant with my mother had Heather. I got done at the hospital when I was pregnant with Heather. I went to Swenson's and then I got done there when I was pregnant with Bridget. After that, I worked for Whitman Agency here in Newbury for a while. And then I went to Paine Investments. I was there for 12 years, I think. I retired from there.
What did you do for them?
I was secretary for 3 brokers.
Oh, you were a busy little beaver with a growing family.
That was busy. And I had a good babysitter, Liz Folsom.
Oh, yes.
Is that Harold's
wife.
Wife. Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful lady.
At that time that the kids were staying with her, we'd come up the dump road, and one of the nights we had a VW, which is not a very big
A Beetle.
car, a real small one. And we had a moose come out the side of the road, looking down on us, if
I
you
could
will.
look out the window and it's moved right here. We were going up to Harold's to pick up the kids after we got out of work.
That was an experience.
The moose probably weighed as much as the
I
car.
could almost look under
Underneath
his
it.
body.
Yeah. Oh, my.
Mike, do you have any good hunting stories?
Well, I really liked hunting, and I done, I think, quite a bit. She has relatives out in Colorado, so I had a place to go hunt elk.
But you're not telling her about the time you went with LaPorte to Labrador.
Oh, yeah. Her
My brother-in-law.
brother-in-law kind of ran a hunting service in Canada, for hunting moose, elk, and
Caribou?
caribou.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I made 2 trips up with him. First one, I got a caribou.
That's a big animal.
That's a big one. And the second trip, I got a
Moose?
small moose. He got the big one, I got the small one.
Always.
And we got those back. Yeah, if you've ever been up in an airplane, a small airplane, you flew by the seat of your pants. You would take off in a small pond. You wonder if you're going to take off because those ponds were not too big and you did need space to clear the water. Many's the time we'd be going down near the pond and stop it. Just couldn't get enough zip there to
Yeah.
get up, which meant we had to go walk to the next pond, hopefully not too far in the woods, so that he could come and pick us up and get off.
He was
the
a good
log.
pilot, though, wasn't
He
he?
is a good pilot. Couldn't really fault him. He
I
knew
ima-
what he was doing.
I imagine if you have a little plane and some people already, and now you throw a caribou and a moose in the back of it, it's a lot heavier than it was.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't
That wasn't
the big
the problem.
no.
Okay.
It was on these small ponds where you didn't have the length to
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
off.
And I remember his plane out in the lake, and it was a float plane. But
Yep.
could he? What happened if it froze over, or you weren't up there?
Many's the time that we'd chip the ice off the wings and
Okay.
run us in the morning.
But they
That
took
was
to
fun.
Labrador. They went for 2 days, supposedly. I didn't hear anything. I'm home with 3 kids. I called the seaplane base. They hadn't heard from them. Didn't know how to reach him. Finally, 9 days, wifey got home.
Oh, you must have been really worried.
That 2 days was awful long.
We couldn't. The weather was not good, so we couldn't get up in the air and move. So we had to kind of stay put. That was the drag part.
Did you? And you had plenty of supplies to tide you over as you waited out the weather.
That's one thing that you can't be opposed to. You
You got to be prepared.
had to fall in for
Yeah.
line on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was an experience, I'll tell you. But I didn't have that kind of stuff out in Colorado. As I did climb a lot of mountains, real. And we're not talking little count. We're talking big mountains. There's nothing to go from 5,000 feet to 12,000 feet, 14,000 feet. So, as a result, my knees are shot to hell nowadays. Yeah, it was very enjoyable.
How about hunting in Newbury? Did you have favorite spots that you would say out
I've
loud?
covered the whole area of Newbury, yeah. That was just deer, though.
Yeah.
Not that there was that many deer, but they're around. So,
Yeah. There were a few of you that
yeah.
got your share of deer.
Yeah, I'm not a big deer eater per se.
He doesn't even
Elk
care for
is-
that venison.
Oh.
Excellent eating. Caribou, you could cut it with a fork, but it just didn't have the taste that a lot of game did.
So Rosemary, when Mike was out hunting, and did you have hobbies that you liked or things, or did you have no time with all the kids?
I didn't have too much time to do anything.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Leah, do you have any questions?
I don't think so.
Anything you want to add?
I don't know.
No?
No.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I even learned some things, and I wasn't sure that I would learn anything new.
Okay, well before we stop it, let's just say the other 2 speakers were Leah McBain and Sally Harris.
Oh, okay.